Well, that's an awfully strange place to put a tire. This is what happens when Rob cuts the grass. Whoops. So, I'm going to order some bits and pieces and put this guy back together again. I've needed to update the steering on this for a long time. It's been so sloppy. And the toe angle, trying to drive straight, I had both wheels probably, I don't know, probably like that far out of alignment to just go in a straight line on this thing. So it was a matter of time before something gave. But there's a front axle. That cast iron just snapped away, so no big deal. I can get a whole kit and replace the whole front end on this thing and make it like new. Put another 100,000 hours on it. Actually, it's 472 or something right now. So this is where she's going to stay for now, and I'm going to place the order and spend some money and get some parts. Today we're going to dive back into the Deere and repair that broken front axle and the worn bushings and spindles and all that stuff. You can see the play. Anybody can see the play. Even there's even play in the spindle. So these were just excessively worn, not greased enough. I know I can tell you for sure when I got this tractor, the steering was almost completely seized. I could barely rotate it. I had to take it all apart, steel wool all the parts, and then put it back together. So from the beginning, this guy was kind of in a sad shape. And I'm curious to see what the wear on the bushings look like on that through bolt for the front axle. That'll be an interesting one. I got to remove the exhaust on the front there to get the pivot bolt out. But if we look in this box here, this is what I ordered from Green Parts. I was able to order a whole front end kit, so it came with the front axle. I got some spindles for it, and I also opted for the upgraded front wheels, the front wheel bearings instead of the bushings. So now it's going to use a sealed bearing on the spindle as opposed to the bushing that's in the wheels now. So enough jabbing, enough jibber jabber. Let's actually get this thing apart and back together. Also, I ordered new steering bushings, a new steering gear at the bottom, and the drag links. Everything will be new on the front end of the mower now. Step number one is to remove the hood, and the hood is just on a slotted pivot, so it's easy to take off. Second, we've got two small bolts that hold on the lower muffler shield. Those are, looks like a 3/8. Can't even read that. Those are a 5/16. And then you have to remove the studs that actually are utilized for the spring mount for the hood. Those were a 10 mil. And then you flip to 3/8 and you take off the 3 muffler bolts. Take the muffler right off. It should slide off of the, I suppose these should be like a header style pipe. And bang, there's the pivot bolt for the front axle now. Totally exposed and ready to be removed. So that's my next step here, is to use an 18 and break that bolt free. See if I can't get this front axle right out of this thing. So I just got that 18 mil pivot bolt out of the center mount there. Those are the bushings that are smashed into the original front axle. And one thing to note is that the plate that ties to the cutting deck, that mount for the drag arm I suppose, is also run through that hole. So now I've got my new front axle just about ready to swap in. I'll pop this out of the way here, probably by breaking the pivot off of the link arm. It's going to let me. There it goes. Now that's out of here. This one was just as sloppy as the other side. Alrighty. Alright, I've got the front axle back on the mower. I ended up having to grease the raceway inside. See if I can't show you some movement here. It's relatively stiff, like it doesn't flop around freely. The old axle had play twisting, so I could actually pull the front axle like forward to backward. And I'm not sure, maybe we can see some wear on it. Yeah. Look right here. It wore that face down. I'm not sure if you guys are going to see that, but that's clean metal. Same over here. So it must have slowly thinned itself as it was aging. Anyway, the axle fits much tighter, so I greased the raceway inside. I put a bunch of grease just now inside the pivot bolt, and I put grease in there until I had grease coming out of both ends. And then I would articulate it and tighten it up a bit. Articulate it, I'd tighten it up a bit, and so on and so on. So it's pretty stiff right now, but it's moving. And the bolt is tight, and the self-locking nut is engaged on the threads. So it should be alright. I also greased the spindles for the pivot for the steering. Now I'm going to put the muffler back on. And then the shields, I'm probably going to try to bang out some of those dents in it and put that back in place. Get the front of the front end back together, and then we'll worry about putting the wheels on, and then we'll get to the steering after that. Hey, look at that, it came right off. This one's rock hard. It does not have any flex left to it. So it's certainly dried out and it's time to replace it. So once your cap is gone, there's a snap ring and a washer that hold the wheel on to this axle, or the spindle. You can use a flathead screwdriver in the recess to pop out that retaining ring. And I believe this would be considered the large washer, which is here on the outside. It spans the distance across the rim as well. And then the wheel should come off of the spindle. And just out of curiosity, it's not really an excessive amount of wear on the spindle. And then there is a washer inside that seat there. So that's telling me that the bushings on the wheels are likely what was worn down and in need of immediate replacement. But because I'm upgrading everything anyways, I get to knock out the bushings inside this hub and then install the wheel bearings instead. So let's get those knocked out. They shouldn't really be in there too tight. There we go, that was better. A lot of grease in there. That's the idea though. Keep them from seizing up. So now I gotta clean all the grease out of this hub and clean this rim up, so I'll be back momentarily with that. Alright, so good news, I've prepped both wheels to save you guys the boring details of knocking out the old bushings. Not really a big loss there. So the upgrade kit comes with 4 wheel bearings, 2 per rim. It comes with inner washers, outer washers. The inner ones are the smaller, the larger ones are for the outer. It comes with new snap rings, new dust caps, and that's about that. So step 1, you install 2 bearings on the new rim after the rim has been cleaned. So they're saying you press these in, and as long as they fit snug, you're good to go. If for some reason or another your hub is oblong or been worn out and it's not holding these bearings tight, what they suggest to do, remove the bearing and put 3 indents into the edge of the rim. Use something like a flat blade screwdriver and a hammer, and on an angle, give it a light tap to deform some of that metal to make sure that it's going to hold that bearing in place and not let it walk around on you. Now, I just need to get a socket that's large enough to do this, because I don't want to hammer on the inner raceway of the bearing. I only ever want to apply force on the outer portion. So this socket here happens to do the job. We're just going to tap that lightly into position. Be home. Nearly there. A little bit more. That is seated all the way. Now we're going to do the other side wheel bearing. And there's the part number, AM127304. And there are alternates, from what I understand, available that may be a more affordable option for people as well. But these will fit on that spindle and ultimately reduce friction due to their design. So let's see the front section of this rim here. I'll rotate you guys to see. So again, this bearing will fit pretty well snug without any modifications. That's about that. So if you remember, grease fitting is in the inside of the rim and the tire valve will be on the outside of the rim. One thing they do mention is to use the grease gun anyways. Fill this empty void with grease as a moisture, to help prevent some moisture from building up inside that rim and perhaps causing rust or maybe even some damage to those bearings. I'm not too sure. that's just what they call for, so that's what I'm gonna do. So now the small bearing, the small washer goes on the rim, or on the spindle first, and that's gonna seat all the way inside. Secondly, you have to put a bigger jack on this now. Slide your wheel on the front spindle. That is really rolling smooth. Wow. Okay, that's going to be fantastic to use. Now we look at larger washer, a M123254 right here, and that's what fits on the outer portion of the rim. Notice how, let's see if I can get you in here enough. Notice how this washer is larger than the actual rim itself, so it should retain that dust cover, which is what it's kind of designed to do. And brand new snap ring here. You can reuse the existing one if you wanted to, but this kit came with everything new, and I'm kind of okay with that at this point with the condition of this tractor. Long term, it's a better option for me to just have the whole thing fresh and clean. So there we go, there's my snap ring in place. So that wheel has a play left to right, but that shouldn't mean anything. Brand new dust cover. Warm it up a little bit and make it pliable. It's just going to take some persuasion here and it'll be in position. It's tight, but that means it's not going to fall off. Alrighty, so that dust cap is now seated on the washer. This wheel is effectively installed. So now I'm going to put some, well, eventually I'll put some grease into it. But next I'm going to do the other side wheel there. And we'll get ready to do some drag links and tie the steering back in. So really quickly here, I'll give you a summary here. I've put the other side tire on. And I did one thing a little bit different with this tire. And you'll notice with the movement side to side on the spindle has been minimized. So what I did differently on this wheel is I actually added the original rear washer in place. As opposed to just putting one and having a little bit of play in it, I added the second one, so the new one that came with my kit plus the original. And it seems to have snugged up that slack that was originally found in the front rim on the spindle. So let's see. I gotta move fast because the battery's dying, but I put that second washer in. Now there's almost no movement at all to that spindle and where the wheel is. So I'm gonna put the dust boots on both sides. I'm gonna hook up the drag links, and I'm gonna rip out the steering shaft and replace those steering gears and bushings. And then I'll get some grease in this. We'll do an alignment because the new lower drag arms are actually adjustable. The replacement ones I have are kind of like a tie rod. You can actually change the length of it to fine-tune your alignment on the mower, which will be great. That'll help with tire wear for sure. I'll have to pull the deck off to do that, but that'll be my next little attack here, and I'll get back to you. Alright, I just stopped and had a little lunch break. So before lunch, I was able to get the half-moon looking steering gear back in place with new bushings, my new drag link arms, my new steering gear, the steering shaft bushings, and everything now is dead quiet. There's no slop in the steering. Very nice. So I don't know that the alignment is quite true. I think it's close. If I had to guess right now, it looks like it has a bit of a toe inward. but maybe it'll loosen up when I take it out and I get some weight on those wheels. So I'm not going to adjust that quite yet. I'm going to go over and make sure I've got everything tightened. I'm going to grease some of the links for the drive line. We'll get the hood back on. I've got a new set of blades for the cutting deck, but I'm not going to put those on until next year. Now we can take this thing out basically and go for a spin and see how she does.